right, joining me on this week's episode, I've got the Driftless. I don't know what the hell to call it. I was going to come up with something cool there, but I got Tony Van Asten on the line. Tony, how we doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome, man. Glad to hear it. Coming from the, I think this time last year, we were also recording, and you were phoning in from the truck. Where does tonight's call find you?
Wow, like we just discussed earlier, I took a wrong turn and went across the river, so I'm in Iowa right now, actually, but trapping out in southwestern Wisconsin. So I just got set up, or just got out here yesterday and set up camp and everything, and I'm gonna trap some coyotes for the next, I don't know, couple weeks or so. Just a real short trap lines, but it's good time though.
Hell yeah, yeah. Well, there are worse turns to take than ones that end you up in Iowa, especially this time of year when you're
Yeah.
you do a little bit of scouting, maybe find a couple sheds in the process, or let
Yeah.
alone, well, isn't Iowa? That's like a 3 bobcat state, isn't it? I don't know if that goes for trapping or if it goes for
Yeah, I think
just
you
hunting
can.
only. But
It might be different in Northeast Iowa. I'm not certain on that, but I know, like, in Southern Iowa, this should be like that in Wisconsin too, in a lot of places, because there's
yeah,
so many bobcats now. It's out of control, but um, it's not like that. I'm sure I'm gonna, you know, catch a couple this year too again.
mm.
So
Yeah. How many? Like
I'm gonna.
it's something that I've noticed as well. Is like it seems like on all the properties that I've got cameras, more and more bobcats are starting to show up, which has been cool because, like, I know, I mean, 10 years ago you were kind of flabbergasted to see one. But I hear more and more guys drawing bobcat tags and having success with those hunts, and especially guys who are out there trapping like you are, finding them in their snares and in their footholds and everything. Have you noticed like a significant uptick in bobcats?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot more in this driftless area, like, compared to back home. There's a good amount back home now too, but it seems like, yeah, there's more and more, and like whatever you get on your trail camera, like, that's just such a small percentage too, because they're like such a little animal that can just creep by a trail camera, and like you're not even seeing them all. There's a lot of them. And when I trapped a bunch of private ground a few years ago, there was every single farmer that I talked to, they were having some sort of issue with bobcats. It was like a major thing. They would be coming up on their, like, front porch and, like, killing their house cats, or they
No
had
way.
a guy had one in the combine one time, and luckily didn't rip his face apart. But
Is he in the cab?
so many crazy stories, yeah, with bobcats. They're so ballsy compared to, like, a coyote. They're not really. A coyote would has wants nothing to do with people, and
Hmm.
bobcats really like that.
Yeah, it's that cat mentality where they kind of still think that they're better than
Yeah,
humans or they're better than anything else, and they just kind of
yeah,
ready to give
exactly
you the
how they.
middle finger and rip you apart. That's
Yeah, and they get real crabby too when you catch them. So.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, dude, some of those videos we've seen of you with some of those cats and traps and everything, dude. Just I mean, let me ask you this. Obviously, I'm sure you haven't like put scales to them because a lot of them, if you release them alive. But like, what do you think's the biggest cat? Like, if you had to put a weight on it, that you've trapped.
I caught one. I think that was maybe 2 years ago. It was in Wisconsin where I had to release bobcats, but this one somehow managed to get him to kill himself in a cable restraint. He, like, wrapped a little stick in the lock, and he was dead. So I
Yeah.
gave it to the DNR, or I dropped it off at the DNR station for those guys because they wanted it. But it was on, like, there was a dead deer there at that place, and that bobcat was on that deer, like, the last however many days, and just was so gorged full of venison that this thing had to have weighed just as much as any coyote I've caught. I mean, this thing was big. It was probably like 30 pounds or close, I bet.
Dang.
Maybe, which, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot because they look a lot bigger than what they actually are, but the thing was huge.
Yeah,
But I
30
haven't
pound
caught
cat.
tons of
It's
bobcats, but every year I probably catch like one, two, or three, something like
Mhm.
that.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Do you ever get any, like, weird bycatch or anything with your traps? Like, just I'm sure you've run into, like,
Uh,
the occasional raccoon or possum or something, but, like, is there
yeah, I
ever anything, like,
catch.
weird?
Yeah, if it warms up, you'll catch raccoons and possums like crazy, which sucks. But caught plenty of people's dogs. Haven't caught a dog in a while now, or a little while now. Um, Last year was, I think, the first year I haven't caught a deer. I usually catch a handful of deer in my cable restraints, which is such a pain to let those does go out of there. Oh my gosh, it's sometimes they can be nice for a little while, and like I just will kind of like sit down next to them until they calm down, and I like will sit there and like just like talk to them almost, and
Mhm.
then you're trying to get the thing off them, and then they just stand up and just start going nuts. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unreal. I mean, coyotes, I feel like they can reason and they totally understand. Like they know what's going. They know what's happening,
Mhm.
and which kind of makes me feel bad sometimes because you like walk up to them and they already know like that they screwed up or
Yeah.
So, but deer, they don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, right. They're like, "I've never been this close to a person that, I knew about, so, yeah, I'm ready to get the hell I've never been this close to a person, I've never been tied to the ground, so, I don't know what to
Yeah,
do." Dude, I believe that.
it's
I had a a buddy of mine, used to work for the DNR, he was an intern, and they did, like, deer collaring surveys, and so he was on one of the trapping teams that would go out there,
uh-huh.
and they had, like, a couple things, but when they'd p catch him in a cage, basically, their only PPE that they had was like essentially a football helmet and some Carhartts, like a set of coveralls. But then one of them would have to get in there to try and put a bag over one of these does' heads to kind of like, 'cause I guess if you cover their eyes, then they calm down. But it's like the
Yeah,
number of friends of his that just got the crap kicked out of them in a cage with a deer that like rolled them up and got on top of them or something and just started wailing on them was, I mean, I, even if it's like a
yeah,
120 pound, 130 pound doe, I would not want that. Those hooves are pointy. It's
yeah. I did have a crazy one it was like 4 or 5 years ago where I had a bunch of snares set up in the marsh, and there was two snares that were like 15 or 20 yards apart from each other, and I had a coyote in a snare and a deer in a snare right next to each other.
huh,
So they were hanging out with each other all night and the whole next morning, which that was wild. Because then there were so many coyotes like around. I can't believe they didn't kill that deer, but
right.
they were surrounded her because I'm sure they were checking out that coyote and um yeah, but they didn't kill her though. It was kind of weird.
Hmm. Would have been too easy. Yeah, they wanted to
Yeah, I
chase.
guess.
Do you do you often see like other coyotes in an like if you catch one, like
Yeah,
will you ever see multiples around it that kind of know like okay
yeah.
something's up
It
over
will
here or
be
something?
yeah. It's really I learned a lot about trapping just, by running some trail cameras out on a few sets, like, I usually do it every year. Coyotes can get really weirded out if they see a trail camera, though, or so it can be tough, but, yeah, like, that's when you have a spot that's, like, a super killer spot, whether you're running snares or footholds or whatever. If there's, like, one really good coyote trail and like, for a fact, I'm gonna catch on that trail, I will set, 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 other snares, like, on the, like, adjacent trails or the small branching trails where there's only, like, 1 set of tracks or 2 sets of tracks, because there's gonna be a bunch of coyotes that come and check that see what's happening.
Mhm.
That's, like, the
What
rule of thumb too for, like, footholds. They always say, like, if it's good enough for 1 trap, it's good enough for 2, and if it's good enough for 2, it's good enough for 3 or 4. So, because
I like
one coyote tracks another, so,
yeah, I like that. Huh. What constitutes like a I guess like a dedicated coyote trail versus a deer trail or any other sort
um,
of a game
a
trail?
lot of times there's trails where it's just strictly coyote trails where
Hmm.
there's no other tracks but coyote tracks on those trails, and, like, sometimes they're going through stuff that deer just, like, really can't go through,
Mhm.
um, but a lot of times there'll be trails where it'll be like mainly a coyote trail, but then there'll be like several sets of deer tracks, and those are the questionable ones to set because you don't want to be setting on deer trails and catch a deer because they're so. If they see it, usually they'll. If I catch a deer, it's like on the first or second day because they'll cut your track or they'll smell you and then they follow you around to see what you're doing, and then they'll see your cable, and once they put their ears, if they get their ears in there, then they're screwed because they'll close on them. And
Mhm.
um, so a lot of times I'll try to follow if I have a good coyote trail where there's deer tracks on it, I will follow it until there's like a point where they're going under something like really crazy where I know and like the deer are going around that to get back on the trail because I
For
know I can
sure.
catch coyotes there and not deer. So
Huh. Could totally like the inverse pinch point to what you're looking for deer. That's interesting.
yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
just try to get them. Or sometimes if it's such a good trail, I will actually lay like something across it, like
Mhm.
find like a big log or like a down tree and kind of like lay it across that trail where deer aren't going to duck that, and but coyotes will keep using it there.
No kidding. Huh. Do
Uh-huh.
they so, I talked to my buddy Drew, he's a diehard coyote hunter, just about kind of like how coyotes use the terrain and stuff like that, and it sounded like they almost use it similarly to how, like, a mature buck would. Like, they want, like, some sort of a wind advantage, they wanna stay more or less out of sight in sort of some sort of cover, like, do you find that might have just been my own brain trying to make a connection there, but, like, do you find any overlap between the 2?
Yeah, I think there is some overlap. I think it's really similar to, well, I mean, I don't know tons about how, how the coyote does its daily business or whatever, but
Mhm,
they do travel a lot when they're hunting, solo, like on a edge of like some sort of cover. They're straight line travelers, not like deer aren't really straight line travelers
for sure.
like coyotes are. But they'll like run a road or something like up against some CRP, and they're they're scent checking the downwind side of that just like a buck would cruise like during the rut.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, they're covering long distances, especially like in the once you get into like the winter time and it's um all the pups are all dispersed and everything, and they're covering ground and establishing like their range for having their puppies in the spring, and
Mhm,
it's like breeding season and stuff, so they're real territorial and stuff at this time of year. So
sure. Do
um
you run into many foxes while you're out there? Or find any
not
at home?
here. I mean,
No?
at home there's still a decent amount of red foxes. Out here, I mean, I've got trail camera pictures of maybe a fox or two in the last I don't know how many years. I did see a pair of red foxes a couple winters ago, but very, very few of them because if coyotes run into them, they're gonna kill them every chance that they get. So,
No kidding.
um, yeah, that's why there's so many coyotes out here. That's why there's if you see a red fox, it's typically right. It's got a den like right up by someone's house or in their wood
Mhm.
pile or something. They stay close to people for sure.
Interesting. I did
Hmm.
not know that. I saw a couple of them. I guess that makes more sense now because we got across the road from, uh, our place, there's a cornfield that every spring they dig a big den in the middle of this field while it's still dirt before they plow or anything, and then usually there's some, at least a pair or with some kits that run around out in the field and everything, and so it's kinda nice being able to see them, but it makes sense because it's pretty dang close to, the neighbors'
Uh-huh.
houses and all that other stuff, so that makes
Yeah,
more
they're
sense.
super cool. I love it. If I happen to catch one out here, which I doubt I ever will out here, I definitely gonna let it go. So
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
I'd
I
like
didn't
to
realize
see
the
them.
coyotes preyed on them that much. That's crazy.
Yeah, big time. They kill them all the time. Yeah.
Huh. Dang. And I didn't realize either that coyotes were that susceptible to trail cams. Like, is it the frequency
Yeah,
thing, or is it,
they're
like, human scent, or have you been able to put a
well, yeah, human scent definitely if you
Mhm.
had just
Right.
checked your camera, but like any I don't know, like they're even like the dark whatever, the IR ones that like deer literally don't see it at all or pick up on it at all, and, like, it will turn a coyote inside out, like, when if he sees, like, that IR or
Mhm.
he some of them too, yeah, the frequency, like, the deer can't hear it. Um, Sometimes if a deer is, like, right next to one of your cameras, like a foot away, like, you can tell, like, oh, they can hear the camera,
Mhm.
and but coyotes, yeah, definitely will pick up on that, and if it's, like, a bright something like a some of my like, older cameras and stuff that I have are, like, real bright, and, I mean, you'll just see, like, a blur of, fur coming down the trail and, like, turning around, like,
Mhm.
they want nothing to do with that, so,
No kidding. Dang.
yeah,
Well, you had an
they're real
interesting, sorry, go ahead.
I said they're just the weirdest, like, animal in the woods, so,
Yeah, I didn't like I don't know. I think everybody has the they try and make the connection that like coyotes are like that much closer to wolves, and wolves are dangerous, and they'll circle you, like they'll pack up and they'll like they hear I don't know just horror stories and stuff
yeah.
like that. I mean, freaking Hansel and Gretel or whatever.
I
Like,
don't think coyotes are really I mean, yeah, they're descendant or they're from the same, they're canines, but
yeah, right,
they're
but
so
they're
much
not
different
wired.
than wolves. Like they're way more adaptable to like I can't remember like which Native American tribe always used to say like if the world ever ends in a fiery end, there's going to be two things that survive is the coyote and the cockroach because coyotes can literally live anywhere like New York City, I mean the
Mhm.
desert, on the beach, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
They can live anywhere.
yeah, survivors, man. Dude, on the note of trail cams, you had seemed like an interesting situation this year with some folks, maybe trying to run off with a couple of
Yeah.
years, isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, it happens every year, but I kinda lucked out with this one. I was so mad about it, and, but they had turned on they turned the cam or they never shut the camera or no, they turned it back on when they got home,
Mhm.
and, so it sent me the GPS so I had the GPS location then on the Tacticam, and so, yeah, I went there. I went to the guy's house and he had it was a property where there was a lot of trail cameras there. I saw tons of cameras and they had taken a few of them. So, um, yeah, it was quite the I wouldn't suggest people to do that. I don't want someone to do that and then they end up getting themselves killed or something over something
Sure,
stupid.
yeah.
Um, I have put some thought into like I just wanted to catch people, stealing my stuff in the worst way because it happens every year. And I thought
Mhm.
about like putting like an Apple Air tag in there, or I was like looking in all sorts of different things. And which the brand new Tacticams now they have, even if they shut it off, it still gives you like a 3 days of like an internal battery where it will show the location until that internal battery is dead or whatever. So
Hmm.
um, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Do you lock your cameras? I'm assuming they came in and, like, lopped it off
Um,
and
No, I don't. Well, I mean, I this year I locked most of my cameras just with like a tiny cable, like a snare cable that I
Mhm.
had laying around. But at least it's something. But a lot of my cell cameras I didn't lock up, and that one I had it was in such an obvious spot. I just wanted to put it there for like a really short period of time, and then I was going to take it down. It's like on this old logging road, and so yeah, it's no wonder why they saw it. And the crazy part is I was hunting that property that morning, and then right after I left, that camera got stolen. I'm like, I was just there. I'm like, what the heck? It was crazy.
huh. Just like, yeah, missed him by 5 minutes or something, huh.
Yeah, it was not long. And then I
Dang.
was like up in the tree hunting at a totally different property, and I was like after this giant buck, and I just couldn't even think in the tree. I'm like, I just want to get down right now and go to this guy's house.
Right. Oh, yeah, I'm
So
sure, yes, but, of course, after you get set up, after you're, situated, after you've hiked in, however far you hiked in, then you get that notification like, "Oh my god," like, my blood would just be boiling, dude. I don't blame you one bit.
I
Like you
was
said, probably not a
shocked.
good idea to go and knock on someone's door, like, you can
Yeah.
contact authorities or whatever, but, at the same time, yeah, that would put me over the edge for sure.
It did, yeah, it felt good getting it back and everything, so it was kind
It
of a
was an
wild
awesome
scenario.
story to keep up with on your story as it was going
Yeah,
on,
there was a
so it
lot of
was
people that were into it big time. That was kinda fun,
Yeah,
because there's a
yeah,
lot of guys out there, that have been in the exact same scenario and just, so they were, like, living it out through me like, "Oh, yeah, that's nice," it felt good for
mhm.
everybody, that I got my camera back, so.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's awesome, dude. Um, Let me ask you this, so, like, on some of those properties where you do have, like, a bunch of other hunters out there, a bunch of people, running cameras and stuff like that, as you come across, other folks' cameras and stuff, like, do you tend to find people end up hanging them, like, nearby yours if you're there first or anything like that? Do you try and basically take a note of it? Like, okay, there's a cluster of cameras over here in this on this trail or on this scrape or whatever, like, good to know. I'm gonna move mine and adjust my strategy. Or what's your as you encounter other people's stuff, what's your how do you
Um,
take in that information?
I don't know, I don't really pay too much attention to what other
Situation
guys are
dependent.
doing. Most of my cameras are, I would say, like, 95% of my cameras are just set up for inventory purposes and, well, I would say, like, 75% of my cameras are set up for inventory stuff, and then I'll have some cameras that are out just for, like, historical data or just to look at, like, at the end of the year. Maybe it's, like, a place I have been on once or never been to, and I just stick a camera out there, and I'm like, "I'll just come get it at the end of the year," or maybe I'll check it once, but typically, I'm not hunting where my cameras are. Once in a while, I will hunt close to them, or one time this year, I hunted where I had a camera just because it was in such a good spot. But it typically there's going to be spots where you can get a picture of like every deer on a property, or like almost the majority of the deer, and it might be
Mhm.
daytime, might be nighttime, or whatever. But the odds that that also happens to be like the best spot to hunt, like, isn't always the same, like, where you could pull it off with the wind and everything else, um, yeah, I don't really, a lot of guys are running cameras, some people have cameras in awesome spots, but sometimes I see cameras on in just, like, the most god awful spots or whatever, and I'm like, "I don't know why, this guy's got a camera right here," um
Smile and
but a
wave.
lot of guys like to hang them up, like, way high too, and
Mhm.
I did have a lot of guys hang cameras, like, right next to me this year, which is crazy, how often that happens now, and a lot of if I sometimes I will take them down, uh, sometimes I'll leave them there. It kinda depends. I did it to someone else. Jake, Flashman, or, whatever his name
Yeah,
is
yeah.
from,
Yep.
I did it to
Yeah, I just talked
him
to him last week.
in the summer. I hung a camera on this killer scrape, like, it was one of the best scrapes I've seen, that I pinned from the year before, hung my camera, and as I was leaving, I was walking down the hill, I looked back, and I saw the wire. He had it way up in the tree. I saw he had a wire, for a strap, and I was like, "God darn it." Like, I just hung my camera we're on the same scrape, and I'm like, it was July. I'm like, I'll just come, get it in a month or whatever. And it was a nice camera that I hung, and I was just worried, the guy is going to come here to check this and he's going to be pissed and he's going to steal my camera or whatever. And then, Jake must have checked his so I went and I took mine. And then Jake must have went in there to check his eventually. I think it was like September yeah, I think it was September. And then he texts me, and it was like, "Thanks a lot for not stealing my camera." So, I didn't even know that's whose camera it was, but it's kinda funny.
That's super funny. Small world, dude. The number of guys I've heard who have crossed paths or like accidentally bumped into the same camera of, somebody else who like, you know, is
Yeah.
somewhat relatively, connected, like, guys, at least on social media and
Just
stuff
happened to me
nowadays,
an
like
hour
everybody's
ago. A guy, I'm walking through the timber, didn't even see a camera, and then a guy right away sends me a text, "You need to get a job, dude." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm under the microscope out here. Can't even walk around without people knowing that I'm out
Yeah,
here."
right?
Kind
That's
of
funny,
funny.
dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was as we mentioned, Dylan earlier, I was talking to Dylan, about a month ago now at Doug Duran's Doe Derby, and we were chatting, and, one of the things he said, 'cause we started kinda talking about that area of, Wisconsin and the Driftless and stuff, and, we were talking about how well, one, we were amazed because I think at that point you were still hard after it in the woods, I think, or I guess maybe in December, you tagged out in November, right?
Yeah, I hunted until mid-January. I think it was like the 9th or something was my last day I hunted.
Oh, shoot. Okay, gotcha. So then you were still out there. Got it. I think we were talking about, like, how the hell is Tony still out there? Because I mean, that day it was like, I think 4 degrees or something like that, and we were both sitting there chatting about, like, how on earth is he still out there
Oh,
just
this
getting
year? Are you
after
talking
it?
about
I'm
this
like,
year or last
yeah,
year?
this year.
Oh, this year, yeah. This year was yeah, it was cold when I was hunting, in that early December or whatever. That was brutally cold.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we were like there and Dylan made a comment that the thing that sets you apart from a lot of the other guys is just that your willingness to push significantly further, even when the tank is empty, but, like, still be willing to hike that mile and a half loop in to access things properly and all that. Like, do you see the same thing kind of, I guess, with like a lot of folks, trail cam strategies, a lot of folks, like it's one thing to have a trail camera in a money spot that's 2 miles deep when you hang it in October and it's, I don't know, or even September and it's 60 degrees, 70 degrees, and it's not that bad getting back there. It's another thing
Yeah.
to do it when it's, you have to get there at 2 in the morning and pull in and, you know, get your ass in there before, an hour and a
Yeah.
half before first light. Like, as you run into cameras, how many hunters, I guess, what if you were to put a ratio of like hunters to cameras that you end up like seeing or crossing paths with in some of these areas, what do you think the percentage of hunters that actually get in there, whether they're not necessarily hunting over that camera, but like actually get as deep into these properties as they maybe need to be?
Um, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a hard question to answer, but,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think there's there's a lot of guys that are, like, some go-getters out on public land, like, I've run into guys doing some crazy stuff, especially dude, duck hunters in particular. You think
Yep.
like some of those guys are really nuts, but um, yeah, I guess I don't really understand like the exactly what you're asking me.
Like, if you find cameras deep in a property, like how often do you like it's one thing to know that you're in like there's somebody who like put a camera in there. It's another thing to have the gumption to get up that early and actually get in there that deep into a property and actually hunt it. Like how many guys do you think have the camera in there but maybe don't ever actually get the gumption to get in there and make a sit that deep into a property? Like, do you think a lot of guys like it's more cameras than hunters on these
Yeah, I
properties?
think if it's a cell camera,
Mhm.
um, and there's like the guys getting pictures of big bucks or whatever is likely to be in there. But if it's a lot of times a guy will I think just have a camera with him when he hunts and then will hang it up like on his way out or whatever. And
Sure.
um but yeah, that's the thing. Like you don't know well you see that yeah, I don't like seeing cameras because especially cell cameras. Because if it's in a I can tell, like, if the camera's in a good spot or not, and, the guy's gonna be in there if there's, some really good bucks in there, so
Right.
but,
For sure. For sure. Well, dude, you put an arrow in a freaking hammer this year. Where did the story begin for that buck?
um, well, I shot 2 bucks, this year in Wisconsin with my
Oh,
bow,
that's right.
so but the second one I shot was, well, I actually shot a buck in Minnesota too that I didn't recover, but, um, you keep, like, kinda, like, breaking up right now. Can you hear me still?
Yep, I got you. Yeah.
I don't know why it's saying okay, I think we're good.
Yep.
Yeah, they were both kind of, it was the first buck I shot was kind of like a new property to me, um, and I spent a lot of time out there this year, and there's so many, like, some giants out there, really big deer, some of the biggest. I really like this place a lot, and I'm gonna spend, some time there this winter and stuff and doing some. I hunted it a lot, so I'm really getting a good feel for it, and so I shot a really good buck out there in early November, and then, I was checking hunting Minnesota, but, like, I would go and, like, check some cameras in Wisconsin whenever I had time or whatever. I was kinda just whatever, and was doing, like, a little bit of scouting on a property that I wasn't all that familiar with. It's a really big place, and I kinda, like, stumbled across some really big sign, like, giant sign, and I was excited about it. I never really got a chance to scout it, but I had checked a camera that was kind of a ways from there, but I was, like, blown away with some of the deer that were on that camera. I couldn't believe it. So, it was gun season, so I wanted to do, like, a scout in that area where I found that big sign. So I went in there at night because I didn't wanna scout, like, during it was opening the night of opening day. So I scouted at night, and I hung a stand, and then I didn't know anything about that deer, but I knew, like, the rub lines and stuff in there were just out of this
Mhm.
world, like telephone pole size trees. So, and I went in there that next day and on our second day of gun season and killed that buck, which that he was a giant 8 pointer, went like 158 inches. Um, and I remember I had my bow, and when I first saw that buck at like 100 and it was probably like 100 yards, maybe like 120 yards, I
Mhm.
thought like he's definitely not going to give me a shot. Like it was right after first light, and I was like kicking myself. I'm like, God darn it! I wish I had a rifle right now. This is so stupid. And luckily, it ended up working out where I got him killed. But um, yeah, that was a cool buck. Really, that was a good buck. It surprised me too. Like I knew he looked huge when I first saw him and when he was coming to me and everything. And then I put him in my buddy's uh his father-in-law's a butcher, so I hung him up in the walk-in freezer there, and then he was in there for a week, and then I went over there and took him out, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this thing is enormous, dude!" I couldn't believe how big that deer was when I saw him for a second time. I'm like, "God darn, that thing is he's a cool buck." So
That's awesome. So what kind of what was the situation looking like with that rub line and just the way the terrain kind of laid out in that situation that like what was your approach like once you found that sign? Like I know you're like a nighttime scouter. Were you in there in the dark? Were you like
yeah, I was in there. I
like
was in there in the dark at night. Just I had scouted it just a little bit. I think I was like wanted to hunt in the evening in Minnesota or whatever, but so I had walked through it and I remember like thinking, man, I it's like super, super thick on this whole like top of this ridge. Like it's like scrubby oaks and CRP and
Mhm.
I don't know, it's like all brushy and stuff. and it seemed like there's a good amount of people that hunt there, and I didn't know what it was going to be like during gun season, but I saw some of that big sign, and then I remember I was trying to figure out like where I wanted to hunt during gun season. I was just gonna maybe hunt opening weekend and then go hunt Minnesota, even though it was still their gun season there. But so I'm like, oh, maybe I should go check out that place where I saw that giant sign because there's like an area in there where I don't want to explain it too well, but it's
Right.
I just in my mind, I'm like, there's no way there's gonna be a lot of hunters there, but there's no way anyone's gonna hunt in this spot because you like go in and then you would have to go like back where you came from almost. It's like the strangest thing.
Mhm.
And and then there's not a lot to it. There's a little chunk of like private right there. And I'm like, there's no way a guy's gonna hunt over here. Especially with a gun, because you wouldn't be able to shoot like all that far. And I'm like,
Right.
I could probably just like well, when I went in there at night and I saw like this rub line, um, kind of like going up to this top, I hung a stand. There was a giant scrape right there. Hung that stand, and then in the morning, basically I could drop like into the bottom and like walk the bottom and then come up that like crazy steep hill and pop right into my tree. And then there's like a almost like a horseshoe shaped um all that like CRP and like thick stuff kind of like makes a horseshoe and like comes the end of it is like right by my tree. And ideally I would have liked to been set up a little bit farther, like right up against like the bigger portion of that thick bedding area, but I knew that there's a good chance deer would get downwind of me if I did that. So it was like right at I climbed that hill and I liked having my stand set up and everything, especially with it being gun season because, there's a lot of activity and stuff happening.
Mhm.
And I got in the tree and because I knew this spot too would like set up well for a buck just to, dive into that stuff and bed down in there. And it also set up like really well for cruising, which in my opinion, like that, it was like the 23rd, I think that was. Like, there's those giants are still out roaming looking for does, whether you want to think they are or not. Even during gun season, like, um, they're looking hard. And so it's set up really well for a buck to cruise too. And right when I climbed in the tree, I caught some movement out like 100 yards in front of me, and I could tell it was a really good buck. And I didn't get like a good look at him, but I knew he was definitely a shooter. And I'm like, man, he's gonna bed down like he soon in there. And once he beds in there, I'm probably not gonna get a crack at him unless something pulls him over to me, which isn't gonna happen. He like worked a scrape a little bit and was like kind of feeding and stuff, and you could just tell. And so I'm like, I think I can grunt to this buck, and I'm on such a steep side hill that he might come over here just because this scrape is here, and a buck could definitely be, you know, down the hill that he can't see. So I wait until like I could barely see the buck, and I grunt twice. I don't see any movement, and then I grunt two more times real loud and just put my grunt call in my backpack. And then I'm looking where I last saw him, and all of a sudden here he because it's like a strip of like grass right in front of me, a small strip of grass. Then it's like kind of it's not open timber, but it's a little more open timber than this thick, gnarly bedding area on my left.
Mhm.
And he walks to the right on the edge of the timber and he's got his ears laid back and he like was all puffed up and just like stomping sideways. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna come right to me, dude. And he looked crazy big when he was coming to me. And the whole time I had such a long time to watch him. And I'm like, man, I do not know when I should draw because if I draw too early here and he like hangs up at 50 yards or whatever, I'm going to be in a really bad spot.
Mhm.
So, and he's walking straight to me. And then What I didn't know is there was like 2 scrapes right in front of the tree at like 3 yards, and then there's that giant scrape at, I think it was 12 yards. I'm like, "Man, now he's in front of me at like maybe 6 yards, and he's facing directly towards me, and he's looking around for a buck, you know?"
Yep.
And I'm standing up with my bow in my hand, but I can't draw. And I'm like, "Man, if he works one of these scrapes right here underneath me, he's gonna lift his head up to work this licking branch, and he's gonna look
Look
right at
straight
me."
at you.
I'm like, if he turns to work this giant scrape though at 12 yards, like then he's done." And he did just that. He turned to work that scrape, and it was perfect. I drilled him, and he went, I don't know, 30 yards and tipped over dead. So it was cool.
Dude,
It's like
that's
I run all
wicked.
these cameras and all this stuff, and it is really, I just enjoy running the cameras. Really, that's
Mhm.
I love that stuff. But I almost like hunting more. Like that was super cool, not knowing I kind of know the caliber of the deer there and stuff, and but it is cool when you see a giant that you never seen him or anything before,
Right.
and it was an awesome hunt. Like it was one of my favorite hunts probably too, and it's cool when you get one killed during gun season with the bow. And it was like a beautiful morning too, like frosty, cold. Like
Mhm.
it was awesome.
Dude,
Definitely
that's
one I won't
epic.
forget.
Yeah, no kidding, dude. That's crazy, man. What, I mean, I'm surprised too, 'cause I like what you said about how, 3rd week in November at that point, bucks are still gonna be cruising, they're still searching, especially those big old ones there. Um, I'm surprised that you grunted him in. And I'm curious, I wanna know a little bit more about, like, your grunting strategies. A lot of times, are you just kind of trying to contact them or just bring one into range? Or are there certain scenarios in which you want I mean, it sounded like in this one,
Yeah.
you had some terrain that was kind of concealing where there, in theory, could be the buck that you're imitating.
Yeah.
But, during the rut and stuff, obviously anything can happen, but I found, like, later in the year, I always kinda dial back the calling because I'm worried that, like, "Oh, they've been brawling for the last 3 or 4 weeks already. They're probably not gonna wanna fight again." But, I mean, this one obviously came in ready to fight. Like,
Yeah.
what's the calling strategy, throughout the
I
the
don't
rut for you?
do I don't do a lot of calling, to be honest with you, but
Mhm.
on occasion, which I probably used to do this more than I do now, but sometimes I would like throw like a desperate call because I knew it was my only option. And
Sure.
now if I have a buck where that I want to shoot and I not going to get a shot at him, sometimes I will grunt to him, but a lot of times I won't.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick sec to tell you about Lone Wolf Custom Gear. Lone Wolf Custom Gear is as good as it gets when it comes to mobile hunting equipment. Whether you're a saddle or stand guy, public land or private, Lone Wolf Custom Gear has a set of sticks, a stand, a camera arm, and any number of accessories to get you closer to your target buck. To make it even better, everything is 100% USA sourced and made right here in the Midwest, and it's even assembled right across the river in Iowa by hunters who love chasing deer just as much as you do. To build your kit today, go visit lonewolfcustomgear.com. Now, let's get back to the episode. All right, back after some technical difficulties there on my end. I've got Tony back with me. Tony, calling in from the middle of trap camp now. Last time we spoke, you were just getting settled in there. How has the week been so far?
It's been all right. The weather's been crazy, like
Colder than
cold,
hell.
like good for coyotes to be moving, but it's yeah, there's been some challenges, but there's always some challenges when it comes to doing this stuff. But the snow, I didn't really think we were supposed to get as much snow as we have, and then trapping like some of this ridge top ground, the drifts and everything are like the place that I'm on right now. I might as well not even put traps out because they're buried under like some of these spots like 3 feet of snow because the drifts are so bad. So
Jeez. So that, like, I guess when it does stuff like that, are the coyotes getting kind of pushed around too? Or are they trying to? Because
yeah,
obviously it's freezing,
they'll
so they're
they will be here. They'll run some of these spots where like on the top of the ridge, like in these ag fields where it's just like bare ground. Um, so if you know like where this how the snow like drifts and everything, then you could set traps there. Like I have some traps on this 2 track, and it's like carved down from tractor tires, like 2 feet, 3 feet in the ground, and
Hmm.
it's just snowed right over. But yeah, a lot of coyotes down in the river bottoms and down low. It's crazy how many coyotes are down in some of these places. So um I just haven't had a day, like we've been getting a little bit of snow like every single day, and then when we don't have a day that snows, the wind blows so hard that I need some like established trails to start snaring coyotes.
Hmm.
Um so now I think we're gonna have like a little stretch where we're not supposed to get snow for a while. So in like a day or two, there should be some beat down coyote trails, and then I can set some snares and stuff, and um, some cold weather the next as far as you look. So they're running like crazy. I just talked to my buddy on the phone, and he said a guy that he works for went out to feed the cows this morning, and there was two coyotes ripping a fawn apart right in the backyard. So
No way.
yeah. So he said,
Dang.
everyone he's talked to so far today have had some sort of issue with the coyote. So
Huh.
pretty crazy.
That is crazy. I guess in a way, kind of cool because then, like, I don't know, it's like that
Yeah.
prime weather that, like, they're gonna be doing stuff, they're gonna be active and running around, but, yeah, I didn't even think about that, like, the past couple of days, even when it's not snowing, when we have all these crazy winds and it's drifting, it basically behaves just like essentially have, like, a blank slate every single morning, I would imagine. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's gotta be brutal, at least
Yeah.
frustrating, and on top of it, it makes it that much harder to at least find sheds in the meantime when you're not running traps, so
Yeah. I found one this morning. I can't believe it. I was just barely poking out of the snow, and it just caught my eye. And a decent, a decent little shed, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. Do you expect more, I guess, with this cold snap that we're having? Like, do you kind of anticipate to hopefully be finding, because we've only got a couple inches of snow after all? Like, do you think more and more antlers are going to be dropping in the coming week or so with this cold snap?
They should. Yeah, there should be some antlers dropping. I mean, we're starting to get close now to that time. Like I had a trail camera video the other day of a buck shaking his head as hard as he possibly could, and I'm positive that he can feel something there,
Hmm.
like those loosen up or whatever, where he was trying to shake his antlers off, no doubt about it. They do that all
Yeah.
the time. Yeah, it's I don't know. A place I was just at, not last night, but the night before. So that would have been like I don't even know what the date is today, the
22nd.
21st or
Yeah.
22nd. Yeah. So the 20th, there was a cut bean field, and there was 17 bucks out in this field all together, and they were
Oh,
all like really good bucks. And I took some video and stuff of it, and all of them had their antlers. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, that's crazy. You'd think there would be like a half rack out there, or a couple shed bucks or something, but no. So,
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I've still got one camera still out right now, and that one yesterday at least. Um, I had 3 of our biggest bucks that we had around my folks' place. All 3 of them ended up walking by about hour and a half or so apart between each other, but all 3 of them still had their racks, and they were, looking plenty healthy. I was a little surprised that there wasn't a half rack in the mix there, as well.
Yeah.
But, well, dude,
Yeah, we're
last
getting close though.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, last time we were chatting before we got cut off there, we were talking. I don't want to make you repeat yourself because I know that that's no fun. But the nice thing is, with a little bit of time to chew on a conversation, I think of all sorts of follow up questions. So we got
Yeah.
all sorts of other stuff to talk about. But where we left off, we were talking about vocalizations during the rut and calling to bucks during the rut, um, and kind of how you called that buck in during rifle season when most of those deer have seen quite a bit of pressure. Um, and we kind of started chatting about just a lot of times I'll dial back my calling because I'm worried they've heard how many other people call or they're starting to get a little shy and they're like tired of fighting and stuff like that. Um, and it sounded like you kind of run a little bit of a similar approach just because of how good they are at pinpointing exactly where your location is supposed to be.
Yeah.
If you were, a buck that's in the woods there. Um, but one of the things that we touched on that I was really bummed that we lost was the art of kind of timing up your approach if you're trying to hunt a buck near his bed. Just because after all, they're running the bottoms in the evenings. And then I'm going to let you take it from there, just on kind of what you've seen in hill country with bucks checking the bottom before they go up towards the top. Because I think we mentioned
Yeah.
the buck that I was after during a late season hunt back in December, where I stumbled onto his bed. And then I discovered that he had another bed that he was in that I kicked him out of that was like 75 yards just down the hill in that lower third before he went up
Yeah.
top. And just what a sick game it is trying to time up that buck getting back to bed.
Yeah, I think it just becomes like a natural part of their day. I don't think they're like consciously thinking about um, their order of operations and how they do things. It's just I think over time they realize kind of how they can smell things and how, and then it just becomes normal to them. And like the buck that you're just talking about that you were trying to hunt in the late season, and like he beds down low, maybe on the bottom third, or sometimes in the bottom, sometimes at the halfway point of a hill. And because he can smell everything for those first, hour and a half, sometimes, depending on what side of the ridge he's on, if he's on like on a west face, it's going to be shaded all morning. So he can maybe smell all the way until 10 o'clock or something. And then he'll head up and rebed. And it's just like a real short movement. Um, so I think I was just talking about how difficult it could be to try to kill a buck heading to bed in the morning, and more so like right at like first light, or right after it gets light out, because um oftentimes, and I think trail cameras too can be a part of this, where it can really like just throw a guy off. And because you'll get a picture of a buck doing something on a trail camera, and then he'll end up in a totally different spot shortly after that. And so a lot of times in the morning, even if the buck wasn't down in a bottom like throughout the night, he'll usually at some point head down there before he beds, or at least below where he's gonna bed. And he'll like walk, but say there's like a whole bunch of points on a ridge, like he'll walk that whole bottom below those points where the thermals are just dropping down on top of his head. So like if he's going to bet on one of those points, and that he's betting on one of those points, so you're like, "Oh, I'm going to get in there early and I'm going to, you know, climb up in a tree and wait for that buck to come back to bed." Well, he just walked through the bottom below you, and he scent checked all those points for any kind of danger or whatever. He wants to know where the does are, where the bucks are, where coyotes and people are. And so he already cracked you. And so say he like continues through that whole valley, and then a lot of times he'll, like a buck will go up the valley, and sometimes there's like a scenario that I'm picturing in my head, like there'll be like a big alfalfa field on the top, and maybe he just kind of feeds his way in the point that he's going to bet on, and then he walks straight down that point and beds. So he's walking to his bed with the wind at his back. Um, so then if you were to get in there after he's bedded, um, it would be possible to pull that off if you were to come through the bottom where he had just, went through, say, an hour or 2 hours earlier, and you came from below him and you set up in a tree. Like, say he's feeding in that alfalfa field and it's still dark out in the morning. He had already gone through the bottom, and then you were to go through that ditch, come up that side of the hill, hop in a tree where you think his bedding area is, and he comes and beds down, right at first light or even in the dark, the thermals are going to be falling down that hill. And he has a short window of where he's vulnerable in that bed because he still has the wind at his back, so he can smell everything behind him. But the thermals are still falling, so he can't smell anything below him. In most cases, he can at least has a sight advantage where he's bedded at. So he's still in a good spot, but it's going to be, you know, an hour or two or maybe 3 hours before he gets the thermals coming up to him. But a lot of times he's not in his bed where he wants to bed in the middle of the day. He's just bedded lower so he can get the thermals dropping down the hill, and then he just rebeds. He just goes up like 100 feet and rebeds, just a real short movement. So almost impossible. There are scenarios that you could get yourself in or that you find where you're like, man, this is killer here because I can hug this like gnarly ditch or like this, like some crazy scenario where the thermals will just like suck right down into this nasty spot where there'll never be a deer, and you could maybe pull that off, but it's hard to find that, that type of scenario. I would say it's a much easier. It's definitely not easy at all, but it's easier to kill a buck coming out of his bed. Like if you're, you know, trying to get real close to his bedding area, I think there's a lot more scenarios that you could potentially make that work. But I do like morning hunts though. They can be real deadly. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things that jumps out to me, especially, and I remember we chatted about it last time, was like interpreting that trail cam data. Where like if you've got a camera down in a hub, and that buck's facing, say it looks like he's headed up the draw, when really he could be bedded clear back around, does a big
yeah,
horseshoe, and bedded ends up bedded, on the other side of that camera from where it looked like he was heading, and understanding, yeah, just like you said, how much traveling they actually do still in that last, couple hours of darkness. Because I think a lot of folks we get so wrapped up in our own heads
yeah,
and like what we're doing, and we're like, okay, well, I'm getting in here at 4 a.m. and I'm getting in here before first light, and like we start thinking of it in terms of like, okay, well, what time's gray light? What time is, actual sunrise? What time's this going to happen? And we're thinking about what our timeline looks like rather than what that buck's
yeah,
doing, and how many variables he has in his favor to be able to do stuff like that, and make sure that he
yeah. There's
stays alive.
like key points throughout the day where um there's changes happening where the thermals switch, like where there's major like thermal switches in the hills where um like right when that sun gets behind the hills in the evening and like in the morning right when the sun comes up and everything starts to warm and cool. So that's when there's like deer. They have short windows where they're a little vulnerable, and they have spots too, like staging areas where they will just hang out for like 20 or 30 minutes and let everything kind of like swirl and the air move, and they're just like picking everything up, and there'll usually be like a scrape there. But sometimes a lot of times I will push the limit, like especially in like the early season, and I will try to hunt in the evenings. I'll look and be like, well, okay, when is the wind actually going to die right off? Like if I have a decent amount of wind to cover my noise, at least I want to get in there as late as humanly possible to hunt. So it's just like a really, really short hunt. Um, but I don't want it to be like dead quiet when I go in there. So I'm kind of like picking my best time because I want to say I'm hunting a little bit lower than I want. I'm like, I know the thermals are going to be rising. And if he's bedded anywhere up above me, I'm going to get busted, or there's a good chance I get busted. But if I can go in there as late as possible, like right when the thermals start dropping before he moved, you know, he could smell everything all day there. He thinks it's safe. So if I go in there too early, I'm screwed. But if I get in there right
Mhm.
on time, like right when he's about to get up and I get in a tree, I can pull it off. So it's kind of like you're splitting hairs with that stuff, and that's what I love about it. It's so much
It's
different
the
than being
puzzle.
like in flat land. Like, yeah, If you are hunting flat ground at home or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I get a picture of a buck, head in this direction." You can, yeah, I'll look at the wind and you can it's sometimes more straightforward, but in the hills, it's not really like that, and that's what gives these bucks, like, huge advantages in survivability, and that's why everywhere in the country where there is terrain like this, there's giant deer because it's so hard to get
Mhm.
them killed, and so I love playing that game. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I like what you said there about staging areas because I think a lot of folks we've been told the staging areas like in the evening it's that little thicket that's off the edge of the bean field before they go
Yeah,
out and the whole herd heads out there and like that's what they're trying to do. But like I've never really thought of staging areas in terms of, it could be that late morning,
mhm,
time frame where the sun finally crests over the hill and peaks down, hits that bottom and lights the whole thing up, and then they kind of wait for that to settle down and stuff like that. Do you see so like I would assume a staging area like that um would be a little bit more, I mean, it would be in that area. It's kind of between, in theory, their lower bed and their upper bed, or at least closer to that
yeah.
point. Is that accurate?
I'm thinking of one in particular in my head right now where um, it's a big southeast facing point. Really good bedding on like up on the top of the point and the whole both side hills, great. And then down the spine of the point, it's like it's real rocky and there's like some bluffy areas, and then there'll be like some little flat spots with little patches of cedars where it's like maybe a half acre like thicket of like cedars, and then it'll like drop off this rock, and then there'll be like another flat spot. And it's such a cool looking spot. And when I first started hunting the hills, and I was on some giant deer and stuff, I'm like, man, this is awesome. And this is definitely gonna work with the wind. Like, and I hunted it a few times and the wind is crazy there. Like my milkweed will go out across this flat spot and then it'll like suck down to the ground and then it'll come right back to my tree, literally to the base of the tree, and then it'll do it over and over. And then it'll like the milkweed will never touch the ground. It'll like go up the point and then come back to my tree. And it's just like a constant circle in there. And then I realized like
No way.
when I got busted by this buck that was like a 180, this thing was just a mega deer. He just drove me nuts. And he would come down that point and then he would just hang out there for 20 minutes, and I had him behind these cedars at like 60 yards, and then he cracked me there, and I tried everything. I hung a stand in there, like a pre-hung stand, and I hung it way up. I'm like, "I just need to get higher maybe." And I just couldn't make it work anywhere. There's no way you could pull it off there, but it's a spot that when there's really good spot for those bucks to bed right there, and then, like, that's where they go right when, they do it in the morning too, but not as often, but in the evening, there'll be a big buck there, and he'll usually stand there for 20 or 30 minutes, and he's just picking everything up, and then, like, feels so bulletproof and confident, then he'll go storming down that hill, and there's, like, some bottom fields and stuff, and I think that has a big role in it too. There's several bottom fields where typically the bottom is, if it's in timber, it's all shaded and there's really cold air down there. But you have like the sun just beating down on these bottom fields. And then when everything starts cooling, like you get this huge this burst of air like shooting up the hill. So when the thermals should be dropping where I was at, the thermals come like shooting up that hill, like right at prime time in the evening. And that's like
Hmm.
what makes everything like swirl there because there's such like the air is doing wild stuff there until everything kind of starts, cooling back down. It's really that can be tricky. And that's why like some of this farm country stuff, like in the hills, can be more challenging wind wise than like hunting maybe big timber out in, like Appalachia or something, because at least there's more consistency with, like the habitat, like it's big
Mhm.
timber or whatever. It's not like all patchy, like where there's hot spots and cold spots and stuff, which makes it difficult. There might be a lot more deer in farm type stuff, but it's tough sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many, like you said, there's so many little folds and nooks and
A lot of
crannies
variables.
and
Yeah.
pockets that a deer can, yeah, can leverage and stuff. Whereas, I don't know, not that I necessarily want to hunt, a 4,000-foot
Yeah.
mountain or something like that, or 2,000-foot mountain. That doesn't sound super fun to me, but
Yeah.
it's yeah, the nooks and crannies in the valleys, like and just like the sheer abundance and like just how weirdly nuanced they are. Like, it might only be something that's a ditch that's 10 yards wide or something and, 8 feet deep, but that right there could have enough. There might maybe there's some weird little spring head that trickles out of there that, creates a little pocket of cold air that does something goofy, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's the driftless hills definitely keep you on your toes and force you to
Yeah.
constantly be thinking, but that's nuts, man. Dude, one of the things we talked about earlier a little bit was hunting around water and just kind of leveraging that to your advantage. And really just kind of paying attention to how deer use it. Because I feel like folks always talk about the if a deer is gonna hit water, it's got to be stationary. Well, in the most of the driftless region, where it is a bunch of trout streams and creeks and ditches and runoff pipes and stuff like that, um, most of that stuff, it's all moving. How have you seen deer using or utilizing water aside from just like a pinch point where they're crossing?
Yeah. I never really paid a ton of attention to it. Well, I have, but um I paid a lot more attention to it this year just because the weather was just crazy, like the hottest um beginning of the season I've ever hunted. It was crazy. And so I hunted a lot of different spots this year, like a lot of bottoms and around water almost every hunt all the way through mid-October because it was so hot. And I had a really cool encounter on opening day of Wisconsin's archery season. So there was a this was like a kind of a it was a new property to me. I had never hunted it before, and there was a buck in there that was there's several big ones in there, but one that was he's in the 180s, I think. Mega buck. And in the summertime, I think it was August, I jumped that buck down in this hub, and I remember thinking we had like a southeast wind that day. And I remember thinking, yeah, he's not going to be here in the fall at all. This is, it's a good spot for him to be in the summertime. He's close to water. He's in like a cool spot and everything. And well, then it gets to they're right outside of that hub. There is, that creek is right there, but it's like a thicket. And then he would have to go, out into the open a little bit to get to that water. And I remember like we had the exact same conditions a month later on opening day. And I'm like, "Man, I think he might actually." I hadn't seen him in a while on camera or anything, and, like, there's a good chance he might be bedded in that same spot that I jumped him, so I'm like, "He's gonna go to water because it's 85 degrees or whatever," but I don't think he's gonna go to the water that he's right next to, because it's a little sketchy for him if he goes out there in the daylight, so I'm like, the base of the hill, it's a super steep hill, and there's, like, some CRP and stuff along the base of that hill, and then, there's, like, a little real small ditch that comes off the side of the hill, and then there's through that bottom field, there's, like, a strip of, like, gnarly trees and tall weeds and stuff, and that creek, it goes right through that spot, so it's, like, a nice little hidden spot where he could go to water, and I'm like, "Man, if he is bedded in that hub, he's probably gonna walk this 300 yards over to this spot to get water." So I go in. I didn't want to go and hunt too early. A, because it was hotter than hell, and I also didn't want, just in case he was up on the hill somewhere, I didn't want my thermals to be rising and then him bust me. So I get in there like hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before last light. I'm set up in the getting set up in the tree and I'm screwing around with my camera, which I don't even like film, I just take a camera with me. So my bow is laying on the ground, hooked to my rope. I'm about to pull it up. And then I look down in front of me and these two bucks are standing there at 10 yards, that mega giant. They're going right to the water. And there was like I think he was this huge 8 or 9 pointer that he was with, and then he blew and they took off. And man, I was like just sick to my stomach over it. That how stupid that was. I really didn't have my expectations weren't that high. Thinking they were going to move at all, but everything worked exactly how I wanted it to, and I just wasn't ready for them. It was so yeah, that sucked. And then I never saw that buck ever again. I don't know if he's going to come back
Man.
this. I don't really know the property that well, so maybe he just summers there or whatever. And he was about to bounce out of
Mhm.
there anyways, but so that was, but I learned a lot about, hunting water. And when I did a podcast with Jake Bush, and that's like his bread and butter, which I absolutely hate hot weather and like working in it or doing anything in it. And but
Mhm.
there is some really good opportunity to like get on real big deer in hot weather. And when I did that with talked with Jake Bush, like he loves, like his best spots are hot weather spots. And like he says he kills a lot of his biggest deer on like real hot days, 90-degree days, which I would not I don't even want to be hunting on days like that. But um so I think he's definitely on something because there's some opportunity there to, they're miserable too, and you can capitalize on them going to water or whatever. So
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think on that note, like you think about how, I don't know, most of us, at least if you're somebody who's not a fan of the heat, like it sounds like both of us are, like, you're not really in the best headspace when it's that hot. You're kind of like just dragging
yeah,
ass a little bit and like
yeah,
not feeling the best. You're like, I just get me out of this heat, get me some cold water, get me whatever, and kind of get on like almost a one track mind almost. So I would imagine that the Bucks are probably doing the same thing, especially if it's a hot October and they've got that thicker coat on, and I mean they got to just be cooking in that.
yeah,
But if anything,
yeah,
like the thing that jumps out to me about that story is like capitalizing on like if you bump a buck on a certain pattern or in a certain set of conditions, like
mhm,
making sure that you go back to try and hunt him on that similar pattern. Cause I think
yeah,
like, yeah, bucks are random and they may not bed in the same exact spot over and over and over. But like,
mhm,
if you can line things up, like I feel like maybe they've got, a route
yeah.
for these conditions, a route for those conditions, and so on and so forth. They've got their
Or
A,
not
B,
even
C, D, E,
necessarily like the
what.
exact same spot, but like there's 2 or 3 of those hubs where it's just like big point, and then like a small valley with a nice flat spot in the bottom of that hub. And there's several of those. So just keep that in the back of your mind, like, oh, I jumped him on that warm day and southeast winds. Maybe he'll be in one of these hubs. Maybe he likes, some bucks just
Totally.
like to bed low. I don't know. And some bucks will never ever bed low. Like you'll never see them in a bottom. Sometimes they don't ever even go down the hill. They just stay on the tops. Like they're um every deer is different. They have like their own, personality almost.
Yeah, definitely.
But
Well,
yeah,
I would
if
imagine
you
too,
see a
like.
buck doing something, then just always keep that in the back of your mind, and maybe he'll do something very similar again.
Mhm. Definitely. And who knows? Like, I mean, maybe those bucks are like the ones that stick to the high points or those, bedding down low, whatever it may be. Like, who knows? Maybe those bucks, like one of them's got better hearing than the other one. So he feels more
Mm,
comfortable lower where he can hear stuff. He trusts that he'll be able to hear something sneaking up over the ridge behind him or something like that. Like it's just like people. Like we all have our own
yep,
different strengths. Like some people's eyesight's better than the others. And and so on and so forth. Like,
Yeah, or just take so many
uh,
bad experiences, like, if they're just so good at associating things with danger, like, if you have so many bad experiences in a row, you just avoid that altogether. Like, if
mhm,
like, this dog goes to this person's house every day and the guy beats the hell out of this dog, he's gonna avoid that house at all costs, like, it's the exact same thing, like, if he runs into a person every time he goes down in that bottom, which it was just a stroke of luck that there happened to be a guy there every time, he's gonna be like, "I ain't no
mhm.
way I'm going down there again." So, it's just it's cool because every animal is different, so
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when I was talking with Tony Peterson last summer, it's like if you went out to the mailbox every day and even 3 days out of the 7, there was a grizzly bear out there ready to rip your face off, like, you'd probably try and find a different route to, get to the
yeah,
mailbox and be pretty damn careful, but
yeah.
but well, dude, this has been awesome, man. I seriously I appreciate you, taking time last week. I appreciate you taking time to come back on and,
Yeah,
finish
no
this one
problem.
out, with me, man, but, dude, you had an awesome season, man. So congrats to you. And you've got some awesome YouTube and social media content that you're putting out, doing a bunch of shed hunting, doing a bunch of trapping. Where can folks go to follow along with that and check some of that stuff out?
Yeah, thanks. Congrats to you as well on your buck. So I have Instagram, which I put a lot of stuff on my story and stuff. Which is Tony VA3, and then my YouTube channel is Tony Van Asten, and I just put like shed hunting and trapping stuff mainly on there. So yeah,
Yeah. For folks who haven't seen it yet, it's the amount of little nuanced stuff that you'll pick up from watching, whether it be just your stories and listening to you break stuff down or your YouTube content, just like the types of terrain and things that you're finding sheds in or you're finding these rubs in and stuff like that. You'll learn a lot from following along with Tony. So definitely be sure to go do that. And on top of that, I think just about a week from now, you and I are both going to be linking up with Derek Malcor from the Dropping Pins podcast over at the Okayest
yeah, that'd be
Hunter.
sweet.
We're going to be doing a little scouting video and stuff. And I have been, this has actually worked out nicely that we had to re-record this because in the interim between the last time we spoke, Brian Dombrowski, one of my buddies from kind of central Wisconsin, he and Derek met up, did a little scouting, found a hammer of a rub, and Brian issued a challenge that we won't be able to find bigger rubs than what they found. So I told him very quickly, like, if anybody's going to find a giant rub to beat that, it's going to be Tony. So buckle up, buddy. But so I look forward to seeing what you guys can find there. Not to put any pressure on you, but folks should definitely go check that out because I think that'll be a pretty cool series that Derek's putting out, and you'll definitely learn a lot from that. But dude, this has been awesome, man. Thanks again for hopping back on, and
Yeah,
we'll
no
talk
problem.
to you soon, man. Good luck on the trap
All
line.
right, sounds good. Thanks.